What everyone knows in my family and my relatives is that he actually tried to murder me, my sister, my mother, and my grandmother that we were living with, and himself. So in the same night, he tried to commit homicide and suicide, right? He was miserable and angry and insane. And he decided, all right, he's going to kill himself and he's going to take the whole family with him. And he said, I even tried to turn the gas on when you were a kid and to do that, to kill everyone and myself. And I asked him, why? Why did you do that? He
Yeah.
literally said, and I quote, I was insane. I
Wow.
swear, exactly what he said.
Hi, everyone. This is another episode of Creating Love Project. And today, my special guest is really special with a beautiful life story. He's going to share a story from despair and being a victim into hope, healing, and empowerment. The empowerment factor. 2 years ago, we met each other at a fundraising party and started to speak. And voila, today we have this interesting, inspirational story. So, welcome, Igor. And I'm so happy to see you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, of course. Wonderful. So, let's start right away. You are born in Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
How is that to be born there? What kind of country is that? It was probably under the rules of communism, right? From the USSR.
Yeah, it's the former Soviet Union. So prior to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, it was part of the Russian Federation. And after that, it became its own independent state. Uzbekistan is in the Middle East, close to Kazakhstan, not far from Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan. And it essentially is mostly a Muslim country. My family and my roots were Bucharian Jews. So we were a minority within a minority within a minority because there's only 500,000 Jews roughly in the whole world. Most people don't know what that culture even is. And
In
then
the whole world, 500,000 Jews in the whole world?
500,000 Bukharian Jews.
Bukharian Jews, indeed. Yeah, I was like, hey.
Exactly. And then there's only 3% of the world are Jewish, right? Somewhere around there. So that's why I say I was a minority within a minority.
Yeah. Oh,
Right.
I get it. I think it's even smaller, point two. Point two. The amount of Jews in the world.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's very low. We have a big mouth, I know. We show up. Well, we contribute a lot to the world, I would say, in a different way. Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
Uzbekistan, and I, we immigrated here a year after that collapse that I mentioned, which was we came here in '92, right to Brooklyn, New York.
So then you were a little boy.
I was 6 years old. I'm 40 years old now. Just turned 40 in March.
Yeah. And you have a sister?
I have a sister. She's a year and 7 months older than I am.
Well,
And how that was coming over, I don't remember much the actual plane ride or anything, but I remember once we got here a few days after when I started going to school, I was fortunate enough to start first grade here. I just remember different language, people look differently. So I just remember this feeling that people were like aliens because I was on a different planet, it felt like.
yeah. Yeah, totally. And did you leave family behind in Uzbekistan? Because your families probably also went through the Holocaust. How do you have stories about that, or they just escaped in time?
We did have some people who were in the Holocaust. I think they had passed away before I was born, but who stayed behind were from my mother's side, I believe it was her mother, who then subsequently came to America that same year, like a month or two later, after we did. So our great grandmother from my mother's side came over too. But from my father's side, there was a good amount of family members that were there, like all his siblings, his three sisters and younger brother, and my father is the eldest, and his parents were there also. So a pretty decent amount of relatives, although we come from a small family.
Why I'm saying that it has always a huge impact. People don't realize that, oh, you moved to another country. No, it's much more impactful. The ground where you are born has your roots connected to your roots, right? And it is, we are not so aware of it. But from all those people that I know that immigrated and moved, it is uprooting. And you said it beautifully. You had the feeling that you landed on a different planet, a different, an alien environment, right? You don't speak the language, you speak Russian, right?
Yeah, yeah. So being Bucharian Jews, we spoke mostly Russian. I didn't learn any English. I didn't go to school in Uzbekistan. I only went to kindergarten. I was too young to really understand how uprooting it was on an emotional level. So it was happening on a subconscious level. But there's no doubt that it affected me profoundly as an adult, even as
Yeah,
an adolescent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So how did you learn English actually? They helped you in
Oh,
school?
yeah, because I started first grade here. That was so helpful because you're learning the English alphabet in first grade.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was helpful, and also the fact that I have no accent perhaps is helpful too, in the sense that if you come here in your adolescence, like when you're 14 or 15, usually hard to get rid of the accent.
Yeah, look at me.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You have a lovely accent. I love your accent.
Well, okay, thank you, but still, I wish I wouldn't, but that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you wish you wouldn't, aren't there accent reduction courses out there?
I've done it. I had a client I did an exchange with, but at a certain point, I speak fast, so then it's often harder to pronounce clearly certain
Mhm.
letters.
I see.
So, wow, tell me more. How was it to be in Brooklyn? What happened?
It was really tough. First of all, in Uzbekistan, we already had a very difficult, tumultuous sort of life with parents fighting always. And there's a lot of bad things that happened back there. In Brooklyn, it was even tougher because when we moved here, the first 5 months, my parents were still together. It was the
Hmm.
four of us with my sister. And then 5 months after that, my father had left. But in the beginning of that, we were always poor, right? We moved to a very poor, dangerous neighborhood in Canarsie, Brooklyn, and the crime was really high there. This is the early 90s, right? It's 1992. From what I hear in the 80s, it was actually nicer there in Canarsie. We didn't, unfortunately, we didn't come at the time when it was nice. So we lived there for about 6 months in a tiny little one-bedroom apartment, the four of us, above a pizzeria, I remember, on the second
This must
floor.
have smelled great.
Yeah, it smelled great. And I remember I used to go down to the pizzeria because they had an arcade. They had a few games there. So that was fun. And
Yeah.
then we moved to a different place in Canarsie, which was the basement of a house. It was like 5 minutes away from the first place for another 6 months. And the floor didn't even have tiles. It was like rigid cement,
Oh.
unfinished.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is another thing. If you come from a communist era, so much money has been taken away. It was very normal that people were didn't have much. If you are wealthy, it was taken away, and it was just very difficult. A lot of people romanticize it today, and it's like, well, you listen to the stories of the people that lived it because it's totally not a romantic story. And it's not fairly divided. In Holland, where I grew up, I learned in school about the term hidden verborgen werkeloosheid. I say it now in Dutch, hidden shortage of jobs. So that means there was a job and everybody should work, even though when there is not enough work to do for nobody, you put just three people on the job of one because everybody should work. So very ineffective, very unproductive, very demotivating, all that. I find that very interesting. How it was everything was decided for you, right? So you
Yeah,
went to the free world and then you are poor because you cannot bring anything with you.
correct. Yeah, government play has a big one here. That's a big topic, how government affects culture and how it affects family dynamics as a result.
Yes.
And the fact that I come from this dysfunctional, toxic family, right? These toxic parents, they had a hard life, right? But it's intrinsically inside its own problem where it came from the government. They were affected by the government, communism. That created poverty, it created a lot of problems. And as a result, some people become more violent. There's infidelity. Some people just do all sorts of different things, alcohol.
Yeah.
When you come to this country, it's a huge culture shock. Not for me, because I was too young, but for them, it certainly was. But even for me, I would say it was tough to assimilate even as I was getting older, as I was approaching my adolescent years, because at home, that culture was still there, even though I was still growing up with just my mother. Culturally, I still felt like an outcast because I just wasn't with it. I wasn't getting this lingo. I wasn't getting the mindset that people had.
What happened to your dad? You say you grew up with your mom. What happened?
So my parents were fighting like crazy when we were in Uzbekistan and physically fighting. And
Hmm.
my father would beat my mother constantly. They had a lot of very serious problems. They lived with my mother's mother in the two or three bedroom apartment. And she worked her butt off. She was a barber hairstylist, so she had her own sort of like business. So from what I recall, she was carrying the whole family. And my father, sometimes he would work, sometimes he wouldn't. Same with my mother. There was a lot of fighting. I don't know 100% about what, but from what I gathered, it was about money, it was about cheating, about just different small little things that they would fight about. So, for example, and this is the reason why I'm going back to answer your question about what happened with my father. For example, my first memory in my life, unfortunately, is when I'm 3 years old and I'm in that apartment and my mother is laying on the floor, bloody, because they had gotten into a fight. No man should raise their hand on a woman. There's no excuse for that. I will add, though, that my mother is an extremely mentally ill and difficult person. She is definitely a narcissist. She is definitely a sociopath, Machiavellian. I would not categorize my father as those things. He's not a narcissist. He's not a sociopath. He's not a Machiavellian. His issue is he is extremely emotionally immature, and he is the epitome of avoidance, the smallest little things. He's also extremely foolish in the way he does things, in the way he treats relationships, and actually, many would say quite cold. So now that you have that backstory, right? So in America, some couples, like if you have a dog or a baby, or if you move somewhere to a different country, you don't run away from your problems, right? They just a lot of times will mask it for a little bit, but then they just amplify the problems, right? As you probably see with your clients, because you're a psychologist. So it was just more of the same, more fighting, more issues. So they eventually had a very big fight at the end. And I remember my mother bit him on the arm, and he's got like a mark still of like her teeth marks. That's how bad, like how crazy things are. What everyone knows in my family and my relatives is that he actually tried to murder me, my sister, my mother, and my grandmother that we were living with, and himself. So in the same night, this was back in Uzbekistan. So in the same night, he tried to commit homicide and suicide, right? So he was miserable and angry and insane. And he decided, all right, he's going to kill himself and he's going to take the whole family with him. So we all went to sleep. I must have been maybe 3 or 4 years old.
You
We all went.
remember this, or it has been told to you later?
It's been told to me, and I know that it's true because he admitted it to me
Yeah, yeah,
later.
no, I believe that. It was more
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difference
Well,
is,
just in
do you
case
know it at the moment? Oh my gosh, or do you hear it later? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just in case, I know you believe it, but just in case viewers are saying, well, how do you know this if you were 3 years old? Everybody in our family knows this. And he actually admitted it when I was an adult to my face and without me even bringing it up.
Was he sorry when he admitted it? Was he like, oh, I had a bad moment? How did he tell that?
We were talking about his actions and his behavior when I was 28 years old. So this is
Mm-hmm.
12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about some of the things that he messed up on and missed out on. And he said, I even tried to turn the gas on in when you were a kid and to do that, to kill everyone and myself. And I asked him, why? Why did you do that? He
Yeah.
literally said, and I quote, I was insane.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
swear. Exactly what he said.
I had some insight there. Yeah. Of course he was, because it's insane to do that.
Yeah.
Just desperate, whatever. It is a lot of other things, of course. Wow. That's at least very honest to say that, to admit that.
It is. It certainly is. Yeah. So now that you kind of see the sort of climate of the family dynamics. So when they came here, it was kind of like a foregone conclusion. There was no way that they weren't going to split.
Yeah. So they did. And then,
Yeah, so they split, and then as it pertains to me, my sister and I just kept going to school, living with our narcissistic, insane mother. For me, it was much more difficult than for her because I had nobody, and no father, nothing. I didn't have anyone to teach me how to shave or tie a tie or my shoes or anything. No guidance, not getting any guidance from her. Neither one of us really did. My sister had it much easier because even though my mother is insane, she at least had a female in the house to teach her about periods and about our menstrual cycle and about boys and different things that women go through and how women think and all this stuff. I essentially had to raise myself, and my sister, to a large degree, had to raise herself as well. But the problem was is that my mother did not create a friendly environment between my sister and I either. She made us hate each other and be at war with each other, trying to see who can be on her side more and create like fights, infighting between each other. So it was insane. It was
Yeah.
truly insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. All this to say, because your question was what happened then. Statistically, and as a psychologist, you can appreciate this, I should have ended up a drug addict, alcoholic, in and out of prison. I never ended up any of those things.
So why not? What was your secret here?
But yeah, because I grew up in really bad neighborhoods, and that should have made me go into those things more, but I saw drug addicts, I saw people in and out of prison, I saw people who were alcoholics, and it scared me. I didn't wanna get into that. Perhaps if I grew up in a more decent neighborhood and didn't see that, perhaps I would have easily went into that from depression and all that and despair.
So you had an example that kept you, yeah. So how did it go with you in schools and friendships in high school, middle school? How was your life at the time?
It's very difficult for a very long time, probably for like a decade and a half. I had a very difficult time making friends and
Mm-hmm.
fitting in. I had a
Mm-hmm.
very, very hard time keeping up with what was going on. I always felt like I was behind in the social scene, or just like people were always sort of like they understood something much earlier than me and looked at me, oh, like how could you not know this? Or why don't you get this? And I kind of connect that to, again, the parental figures or lack thereof, where the
Mm-hmm.
caretakers have not given the proper social skills, the proper guidance to prepare me for life and for people and situations. I look at it this way, it's like people who had good parents or a good parent or good caretakers, they had a navigation system, they had a GPS, whereas I didn't, right? So it's like they got to their destinations 10 times sooner than I did in every way you can imagine,
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. So you found somewhere you're not religious, you have nothing that you turn to in a way. So you actually found the strength in yourself by seeing the bad examples. So you had a kind of inner compass, if I may say, that you felt like I'm good there because as I know you, is you're very mature and social and all you have I don't notice anything, right? So you really yeah, you created your life in a beautiful way and you went to college. How did that go? Did you get financial help? How did you go?
Yeah. So, yeah, I went to 3 different colleges, and, yeah, I did financial aid from the government. That was very hard in terms of how it went because I had to work full time, and
Yeah.
when you're working full time, going to college for full time, it's extraordinarily difficult.
Yeah.
I never ended up, really getting a bachelor's. I got an associate's in ophthalmic dispensing because I used to be a licensed optician, and I used to sell eyewear and eyeglasses, prescribed lenses, and then I was an eye surgery consultant, and then I got into marketing, which is what I do now for the last decade and a half. But school was extraordinarily difficult for me, even before college, because in high school and junior high, I had a hard time paying attention because at home things were always so chaotic. I had a difficult time staying focused. I was looking at girls and trying to get a girlfriend or go out or have fun, looking for love, I guess, from a woman because I never
Yeah.
got love from my mother, first
Yeah.
woman in my life, right?
Yeah. 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 How did it go? Tell me more.
I mean, I had some dates, I had some girlfriends. I never had a problem in that department, really.
That's great then, at least, because there are a lot of people not that lucky. Yeah.
Well, they weren't all good relationships, you know. I guess I mean in getting someone, I never had really a problem, but once I was in a relationship,
Keeping.
I had issues, exactly. But in terms of what I would have loved was, in retrospect, I would have loved to had a more stable home so that I could have focused better academically and accomplished more academically.
Yeah. 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 That is true. But from our adversaries, we can learn a lot too. And that's what you definitely did. And there are many people today that do not have, and in my entire life, I've not seen it differently. People that do not have academic degrees can be very successful. It's your personal story and attitude, and that makes it probably more. There are people that have so many degrees, and you made it. You made really your life work, and you're happily married. And so you have that past that you spoke to about in the past to me, about the part that you felt like really victim of the world, a victim of society in a way, in your small society, like your family and all that, right? And alone. What made the change that you started to see, okay, I don't want that? What is that? What's that emotional process? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I will say that from a very young age, even when I was, I'd say 9 or 10 years old, I already knew I didn't want it. And I think what helped me are two things, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I innately had intelligence, and I innately had a lot of anger because of my situation. And I think that combination actually helped me because I was smart enough to know that I wasn't happy with my surroundings and my situation with the family. But on the other hand, I was really angry, which I think that anger helped propel me to attain certain things, achieve certain things. As I got older, when I was about 25, I started going to therapy,
Mm-hmm.
right? I started seeing a psychoanalyst, a psychotherapist, and I went to him for 2 years. That's when I started to become more self-aware, even more. I was already self-aware, but that started opening me up to my subconscious, my behaviors, and my certain blind spots that were hindering my progress, my success. Then I stopped going at 27. I was getting really into around that age in my mid 20s and even earlier 20s into personal development, self-help books,
Yeah,
reading
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot. Yeah, because I wanted financial success. I wanted emotional happiness. I wanted happiness in a relationship. I wanted a family, myself. I still go to therapy now. I've been going to my therapist for 3 years. He's got a PhD as well, like yourself. And what helps me, well, we're a good match in terms of our sessions and all that. But what helps me is I did a lot of research on the topic and I understood what it was to be a good client, to get the most out of it.
That's smart that you did that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very smart. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. So a total of 5 years of therapy and still going. Therapy is a huge, huge, huge thing for people who come from backgrounds like myself. Yes, there are a lot of people in my situation who, again, would have easily become a statistic, and they do, and people who come from wealthy, very nice families who become drug addicts and alcoholics and abusers.
There
So
are so many reasons. When I heard you talk in the beginning about your mother and the labels your mother received, right? You can be born with inherited trauma, of course. It becomes your epigenetics, your genetic part. You can have a very difficult childhood. I don't know what happened to your mother and your father, but if I say it very simple, love didn't flow. They were not able to love each other. They were not able to be loving for their kids. I think the most important component in relationships, because you can be really wealthy and you can have a lot of things going for you, but if you don't spend time with your kids or you don't have the love for them or you never see them.
my whole thing is that I believe that it's irresponsible of people like them, parents like them who know they come from traumatic childhoods to decide to have a child or children if they are not ready to be real good parents. If they're not
Yeah.
physically set or emotionally set, I think it's irresponsible. But the problem is they're not aware enough to be responsible enough.
Not only that, Igor, there are two reasons. I think this is valid for a big part in the world because you see how the world is and how many unhappy people, in a way, there are in so many countries everywhere. Love is, of course, very hindered, if I speak in this way, by what our parents bring to us. And that awareness, what you say there, I said the same thing always. And in my teenage, no, later on, I remember when I was in the conservatory and I said some people should not get children. And it was very well founded by why. I think some of that the other student wanted to kill me for saying that. Who was I to be so arrogant? And that's not what I meant. And you know exactly what I meant there. It is, if you have a child, getting a child means stepping back as an adult and look at the needs for the kid, work on yourself. And that is the beauty of this time. There are a lot of things maybe not so great today, but it is the beauty of this time is that we can find healing, can work on ourselves. It's easy, accessible. Not every therapist is as good as the other. There are a lot of people that bring their own stuff also into therapy as a therapist. Nobody is perfect, nobody. But the intention, do your best, and the self-reflection. And the sad thing with narcissism, that popular term that we use so often today, or many people do at least, I don't like it too much, there's no self-reflection, but there's also a problem with love. If I hear narcissism, I feel compassion because I feel right away the shortage that isn't there, right? And what you did is in a way what I did too, from what I did not have in my childhood. My parents were not as terrible as you described, but were definitely big issues. And I learned so much from it to what I didn't want. You and I have that in common. And I think that is maybe what most of us do or need to do. Although I know still a lot of people that say, I'm not going to therapy, I'm not crazy, I don't need it. Da, 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 da. And it's always so easy to blame, right? Or to stay stuck there. But you take it with you and you ruin your life. My father even said when I was a kid, people before they would become parents, they should take a course in parenting. Now you have a lot, it was a very modern statement. I'm not sure he was willing to take the course himself because he knew it all so well, right? But he looked at other people. My parents were very judgmental. It's typically something like they look at others. No, I had one sister above me, the first child, I was the second, and she was severely autistic, never spoke a word, and impacted my upbringing, of course, tremendously. I got two younger brothers, which I have a great relationship with. But my mother was very young, and as a child, she went through the war, and my father turned a different way. So that was hard. But they were idealistic in this way. They wanted to have kids because they wanted to build that family, specifically what they didn't have. When I became critical because I was the black sheep and I wrote them letters how I would like to have to be because they didn't listen to me. So then I wrote letters and they didn't like that, of course, because they thought we are great parents. It's beautiful if you look at those kind of things. Yeah, they were maybe pretty advanced in certain ways. Didn't go into therapy, but it is a learning process. I'm intrigued about your parents. What made them the way they were? What happened to them? What happened to their parents? What happened to their family members? Because you know that I would do the work, systemic family constellations, and you can so easily see. I have had actually many women coming from the Soviet background, a lot of violence. Now, what I can see in my work, if, for instance, a woman gets a daughter, and I have had that several times, and said, I don't love my daughter as much as I love my son, and I don't know why. There is like a block here. So that is interesting. Now, if you then start to do the work, for instance, in a group, then that's easy to see. You can see that somewhere a few generations back, it started. We can call it a secret. Something happened. We don't know what. But often it could be a rape, and a girl that is born out of rape. The resentment the girl or the woman feels towards that girl, that is not the fault of the baby, but there are still people today that blame the child for being born while it is their lack of responsibility, or the crime that a girl is raped and becomes a mother through that. She couldn't love her daughter, and then the daughter didn't know how to love her daughter, and that goes for generations until you see it, and then you can shift it. And there's a beautiful process, but these are simple things, only that. Brings me to the thought in 1945 when the Russians invaded Germany, right? 9 months later, there were 200,000 babies born.
Yeah.
Well, they were not babies out of love relationships, right? So how does that impact a people? Just as an example, if there are so many babies born out of rape and blamed for it, or they look like the men or one of the men from the group of men that were gang raping. Holy moly, if you start to think about the cause and effect with all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, you're a kind of a miracle how you created your life and how you speak about it, coming from a background that is so heavily burdened and so traumatized. I have a lot of respect for people like you and also for speaking openly about it without, oh, poor me, the victim, because that's one thing you said too. From victimhood to being a victor. What shifted in you? What was the moment that you changed that way of looking?
Well, I always wanted more. I always wanted to be successful and I wanted to be happy. So I wanted to have financial freedom and I wanted to have true happiness where I'm content with every area of my life. I knew that I had to get my money straight and I knew I had to get my mind and my emotions healed. I knew I would get there eventually. It took a very, very long time. I didn't want to be mediocre or subpar. I understood life is short and I really was thinking that to not waste my time doing stupid, silly things like drinking and partying and drugs or video games. I said, look, I'm interested in business. I became a business owner and I've been a business owner a long time. I said, I want to live well and I want to be comfortable because this fact of the matter was I had nobody else really to rely on. That's really the truth. When you are confronted with that, you have enough awareness to realize, well, okay, either you do it yourself and you get serious, or you're gonna end up in like with on welfare, or you're gonna end up in these orphanages, or you're gonna end up in jail, or whatever the case may be, or government assisted living or whatever. So I said, all right, well, just gonna be a lot of hard work ahead, Igor. Get ready.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
yeah.
was, and it still is. I'm doing a lot better at age 40 than I was at 30 or 20.
Can you see you're happier today than 10 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that also comes with age too.
Not
So
always. Not always.
not always, a lot of
Can.
times. It can, yeah, because you're more comfortable in your own skin if you've done the work
Good.
to
Yeah.
yeah, if you've done the work to create awareness and understand yourself and the people and life around you and world around you, you come to accept things a lot more. I personally have calmed down tremendously. As I said earlier in the interview, I had really severe and very long anger issues for many, many years.
Where did you think that came from? Was that like an inherited anger that you couldn't understand? Or was it your response to not being heard, being frustrated, and all that? Where do you think that anger came from?
I think all the above. I think witnessing violence from a very young
And
age,
the frustration is that.
yeah, witnessing arguing and their anger automatically goes into it. I have my own podcast. You were a guest on the
Yep.
show, right? And we talked about epigenetics, right? Which you have such a deep interest in and so much research in and study. I learned a lot from you where I heard about this in a much smaller level, but I learned a lot where you taught me that we carry the baggage of our ancestors. So I think that anger was probably in me innately from my ancestors and from my parents and grandparents. What I was exposed to and just knowing my situation, being the son of a father who knows that when you know that he tried to kill you and your whole family,
Yeah.
it's enough to make anyone angry.
Yeah. And that was like almost an invisible hand keeping him from doing it because there are other fathers that were successful in this.
The only reason I'm alive, it wasn't an invisible hand. I'll tell you whose hand it was. It was the grandmother whose apartment we were living in. Could you imagine what a piece of crap my father was back then? He's living in her apartment. She's paying for it with the whole family. He's got a wife and two little kids. And he literally tries to pull something like that to try to kill her and the two little kids and himself and his wife. She woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning and smelled because he turned on the gas on the stove. So he was trying to kill us with carbon monoxide poisoning. She woke up at 2 or 3 in the morning because I guess she had a sensitive and acute sense of smell. And she basically said, what the F is this? And got up and she immediately put one and one together. She knew it was him because of all the crazy stuff that was happening even prior to that. Yeah. The anger was also instilled in me by my mother, who I know you said you're hearing the term narcissist, you feel bad for them. Yeah, she had a very difficult childhood, so did he. But why have kids? Why start a family if you're so messed up?
You don't realize you're messed up. That's one of the
That's the problem.
problems often.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or you
exactly.
hope to get happier then, maybe, or it just happened.
Exactly. Right. And like what you said earlier, your father had said people need a license to be parents. I remember my first therapist when I was 25, he said the same thing. He said people should take a test and get a license. I
Yeah.
truly wish that could be a reality one day. It probably won't, but it would save a lot of heartache for a lot of people.
May I say something? My father said in the same token, Benjamin Spock was then very, I don't know if you know about that. It was a psychologist, and his book about parenting was read in Europe and America. I think it was an American psychologist, psychiatrist, I even don't know. He said, for instance, that you should let baby cry and that they will soothe themselves. And that is proven to be a very bad advice because the baby feels lonely, not heard. It's a start for a personality, like I don't matter. So if we do parenting classes, it needs to be nice and love based and all that, common sense. And well, there's a lot to say about it too, because we are very in this. I was speaking about America for me, a lot of people are very conditionally loving their kids. If there's an issue, is like go to your room instead of let's calm down, please. Before I want to hear what's your problem, but I don't want to be yelled at. So calm down. And when you can calm down, I would love to talk to you instead of punishing. Go to your room. You're disrespectful. I did not raise my kids like that. So the result is that they say everything what they want to say, most of the time respectfully. I'm not ever bothered about it, but they're very honest. So that's from nonviolent communication. I would like to put that in because that's a great tool. And there are more great tools, of course, today. But the awareness of how we speak to kids. But again, your parents, they are not like this out of the blue. They must have been treated like that too. I'm very intrigued by the grandmother your mother was living with. She's the mother of your mother, and she saved your lives. And in a way, how would she have thought about all this if you cannot ask her? You have also mentally ill people that are born with, you said a sociopath, a psychopath. Yeah, that's definitely also often inherited.
Yeah, so my grandmother, she died like 7 years ago. She was not happy about that because when she found out about that and saved our lives in her own life. But I would go even further and say that she played her part in that too, in terms of his decision to decide to do that and include her in that night as the potential victims because she did not help the situation. Again, they were living in her apartment. She was not the brightest of people, and she was also a narcissist as well. She had
Yeah,
narcissistic characteristics.
I
You
was
know,
expecting it. Yeah,
she provoked a lot of things as well. So
yeah.
she's not an innocent party here either.
No.
He should not have done what he tried. I personally think both my parents, my mother and father, if they're listening to this, you are both insane. You're both out of your minds and you both have, you should be held accountable for your family crimes. I cut my parents out years ago. I tried giving my father a chance several times. It lasts for 1 year maximum, and that's it. Once when I was 15, 28, and then 38, and it barely lasts for a year. With my mother, there's a 13-year gap. With my father, since he left, and a few times I tried talking to him, there's like a 31, 32-year gap. Most of the time, well, actually all the times, I cut them off. I eventually cut them off because I just realized this is just not working. So I'm at a point in my life where I'm never reaching out to either one of them again because I've tried enough times.
So you
There,
were the one that reached out and they didn't do.
I was the one. Well, with my father, it's always me reaching out because he's too much of
Hmm.
a coward to reach out on his own. The moment you make it seem like, the moment you give him an inkling where you show him that you're displeased with something he did, he disappears. He's
Mm.
a coward. He runs. He hides. That's his whole thing. His whole mo. He's like a little kid in a lot of ways. Really, a truly immature idiot. And with my mother, I have to keep cutting her off because of how toxic she is in every way.
Hmm.
I actually have to block her on my phone all these years because if I unblock her, she'll still try to call or have a relationship. But the problem is having a relationship with her is exhausting on every level. It's toxic on every level. It's not worth my time or the energy spent. My psychologist approves of this as well because we've done some heavy work, but I've cut them off even before this newer psychologist. All this to say that although to some viewers this might sound harsh, some of the things I've said, They just don't understand who they are. My parents,
Yeah, it's easy to judge always. And let's not do that for sure.
correct. They don't understand what type of people my parents are, what they did, and I'll go as far to say as what they didn't do, the things that they were supposed to. Like, for example, there were never any hugs in my home from either one of them. No one ever said I love you to us. Nobody ever guided us really. They weren't there for us. And what pisses me off most is like if you talk to someone like my mother, she'll say, "Oh, you're unappreciated. You're an ingrate." Because why? Because she fed us and gave us a roof over our head and basically did the stuff that she was supposed to do as a freaking parent. You know what I mean? It's like you didn't do me a
You're
favor.
still a little bit angry. You see that? You're
What's
still a
that?
little bit angry.
Oh, a little, a good bit angry when I talk
And
about.
that's totally fine. It is so sad, those stories. It is very, very, very sad. Yeah. Yeah, no, we don't need the judgments of others. And it is should not be a fashion to cut off your parents easily, but there are situations that you need also to rescue yourself.
Right.
It is very hard to take in parents that actually do not deserve the term parent, but it's still our ancestors. Yeah, but I think I'm very proud of you how you made all those changes. And that's actually, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so fast forwarding to today, I'm in a much better place. I'm happily married. I don't have kids, but we're happily married, and maybe we want to keep it this way. Maybe we don't want kids. I have my own business. I have a podcast, and
Tell about the business quickly and tell about the podcast quickly.
yeah, so I do digital marketing for the last 16 years. I have a company called Core Media with a K, and
Hmm.
essentially we help enterprise and small to medium sized businesses with getting more leads and clients for their businesses and their services, for their products and services. For my podcast, which is called Point of Departure on YouTube, it is a business podcast which also I integrated with life, and basically it investigates defining moments in business and in life and people's pivots in their careers. So I'll have guests in from all types of backgrounds. Like I had yourself on, PhD therapist, right? I'll have an attorney on, I'll have doctors on, I'll have leaders and innovators on, I'll have creators on, I had a director on.
People
So
with a story. People with a story.
people with a story, something of value for readers to hear, for listeners to hear. It's been a really fun and fulfilling process for me.
Yeah. Fantastic. I wish you a lot of success. Of course, in the description below, I will put the information to all that and the links. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this conversation, I hope I appreciated it. If you that you appreciated it, so please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Leave a comment and a like. It's always very appreciated and helpful. And thank you so much, Igor, for
Thank you.
your contribution, your honesty, and your vulnerable story, but a story especially about empowerment and beautiful, beautiful, what people can do through everything in their lives. I didn't hear bitterment. I didn't hear self pity. You are not there. You have not advocated that. And that is actually very admirable how you direct yourself to this entire situation. And now you're very successful. So I wish you all the best and see you one day again. Take
Great,
care.
great to
Thank
be
you
on.
for watching. Take care. Bye bye.